Hey everyone, this is Matt from End Sickness. Today I'm going to talk about how mast cells affect your mood. Mast cells affect everything in your life, your body, your symptoms, your mood even. We'll talk about the mood today in this video. First, let me say I'm not a medical doctor. It's just not medical advice. It's based on my personal experience and is informational and educational in nature. So first, let me talk about mast cells. Mast cells can actually contribute to mood shifts by their perception of danger, whether it was something you consumed, something you saw or observed, something that you inhaled, some past trauma that got resurfaced through something you experienced. The reality is these mast cells are going to send out inflammatory molecules, and these inflammatory molecules are going to interact with different neurotransmitters in the body and affect the way you feel. So for example, when mast cells have an inflammatory reaction, they send out histamine. Histamine then blocks the effectiveness of GABA and dopamine. It counteracts with them, it competes with the same receptors, and it causes a lowering of dopamine and a lowering of GABA. And then also serotonin levels are low whenever you have activated mast cells and they're secreting all these inflammatory molecules. What happens is they secrete histamine, they secrete cytokines, prostaglandins, all kind of things that affect the balance of these neurotransmitters, and you end up with low dopamine, low serotonin, low GABA. You end up in a situation where your body is in a heightened state of reactivity or in a heightened alert state. Your mind's racing, thoughts are flying, and that's the problem with mast cell activation. When you get in those situations where you're reacting to things, your neurological system gets into a state where it's inflamed and it starts to become impaired, and now you're having all this deficiency in these neurotransmitters. You're really experiencing these thought loops. I experienced it myself. I went through it. I've seen others go through it, plenty of clients. And the reality is you got to get yourself out of the reactive cycle to be able to get into a better situation. How do you get out of the reactive cycle? Well, first you examine, what am I consuming? Okay, how's that react? How is that in relation? How are my symptoms in relation to what I'm consuming? So for example, if you're consuming wheat, dairy, nuts, seeds, gluten, all those things, then guess what? You're probably going to be reacting to those things if you have these mast cell activation symptoms, or it's already probably happening. So the next thing you'd focus on is looking at your environment. The mycotoxins are always an issue if you have mast cell activation or you have these reactions that are occurring to things. They're almost always an issue if you have a chronic illness that has autoimmune-like indications or autoimmune-like symptoms. And you cannot neglect mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are always part of it. So if you want to check out your mycotoxin antibodies, that's the best way to be able to determine if you have a mycotoxin issue or not. And you go to mymycolab.com and they will show you your mycotoxin antibodies, your IgG and your IgE. Your IgG is your past exposure. Your IgE is your current exposure. It'll show you what happened in the past, what your immune system perceives as your exposure level to mycotoxins in the past, and it'll tell you what your immune system is perceiving as your exposure currently. And if you're living in a place that has high levels of IgE, then you're bingo, jackpot. You could have found the root cause of what you're dealing with. So it's always what you're consuming or when you're inhaling or what you're thinking, the third part. The mast cells are activated by what we're thinking as well. And if we're perceiving things as threatening, if we're telling ourselves the same old story about events and that we're not going to get better and that this food's going to hurt me and that this relationship, I'm going to, be left in the cold or whatever it is, you're playing into old traumas in your mind that are unresolved, then you're going to activate your mast cells that way. All these things go back to the mast cells. I mean, when you're talking about any symptoms, you're talking about even PTSD symptoms, anxiety symptoms, depression, all of it starts with the mast cells and them secreting this extra histamine, extra cytokines, extra prostaglandins, which throw off the balance of these neurotransmitters and get you into these mood shifts. So if you have mood shifts, you got to start wondering, how is my immune system actually playing a part in these mood shifts? Because the reality is they're almost always playing a part. It's either something we're consuming or something we're perceiving, and it's causing our own immune system to send out chemicals, inflammatory chemicals that counteract that are counterintuitive here, because we're not trying to have low dopamine, low serotonin, low GABA, etc. So I hope this video explains it. Mast cell activation is tied to pretty much everything. You don't want to neglect that reality, that if you're going through mood shifts, you're going through ups and downs through your life, that it's more likely tied to something we're consuming, something we're inhaling, something we're perceiving in our environment that is, believing that this thing is threatening, So I'll talk more about that in future videos. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to my website, endsickness.org, and feel free to put any questions in the comments.